Hello and welcome to the second episode of Solo Sessions. I'm your host, Ben Canute. Thanks for joining me. We're getting back into this one. Still starting off, I think I'm getting used to looking at myself in the camera. I kind of got to look over, pretend I'm not talking to myself. And you know what? I'm just decided I'm going to start off this week with a little mini rant because it's something that's been bugging me for a little while now, and you put up with it, but you get a little bit tired as you go into these long rides or even runs, standing around, whatever. And maybe your tolerance for some of these things just goes down a little bit. Your fuse gets a little shorter. So I'm out there riding, and my pet peeve now is leaky water bottles. And for some reason, pretty much my entire career, I think I've been plagued by leaky water bottles. And in the day and age of our high carb drink mixes, it's a little rough to be going down a bumpy road and having high carb drink spraying all over yourself and your bike. I got a beautiful Ventum bike that I'm riding on. It's matte black, platinum they call it, so it looks like a black blue. And when I have that carb drink on there, it's like an extra shell. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Good Life Nutrition. Love the fact that I can put 100, 150, whatever I want in the bottles. But when it shakes, and if it was just water, whatever, the bike's getting a free little wash. But you know what? When it's the carb drink, it's just, I can't figure it out. And this could definitely be user error because I'm lazy and I don't hand wash my bottles. I put them in the dishwasher because time is money. I'm always resting in between workouts or chasing the kids around, and I don't feel like scrubbing my bottles really cleans them as well as it could. I know the BTA bottles, only so much you can do. I hand wash those because it's just, I don't feel like they get that washed in a dishwasher anyways with the opening to them and everything. But with a normal water bottle, heck, I throw those things in the dishwasher, bottom rack, so they probably deform a little bit and ruin the seal. But even so, the very tops of the water bottles where you drink out of, I feel like those even leak on me a lot. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what I can change. I'm on the quest for the perfect water bottle to make sure that I'm not losing fluid, I'm not losing carbs, and yeah, that is, I guess, how I wanted to start off this episode. Just had to get something off my back and rant a little bit. In the grand scheme of things, is it really that big of a deal? I don't know. But to me, I'm still trying to figure this out, and I don't really know what the answer is. I think this is probably a topic that people might feel pretty passionate about. I feel like in the age of Stanley water cups and water bottles, and you have all these different ones out to be able to buy from different brands, whether you have them labeled or not, I think people have their favorites. I'd be curious if anybody's out there listening. Send me your perfect water bottle suggestion, and I'll go out there and I'm going to try it because I am, like I said, on this quest. So that's just the beginning. I'll give you a little update for where I'm at after the rant, now that I've got that off my back. And, after Frankfurt, I took some rest, and I just built up to a pretty decent amount of volume. And so I was recovering from that. Neil gave me even a couple extra days than I feel like I usually get to recover. And then we're taking it fairly, I would say, conservatively. Then again, typical triathlete, I just want to jump into doing the biggest, best, longest, hardest workouts I can when I'm feeling good. But we're just taking our time, a few days to just build back into it. And that's good. That's great. But I was thinking triathletes are pretty bad, and I think notoriously bad at resting. Now, being a professional, I think I have developed a pretty good sense of being able to put my feet up and a pretty good ability to be able to do so guilt-free because the rest has a purpose. And in particular, this is, during race week, that is a very easy time to be able to put the feet up because all you want to do is make sure your energy levels are at the absolute maximum for when race day goes off, so you can squeeze every little drop out of that washcloth to be able to cross that finish line, empty a full tank. So that's pretty easy. And even when you have big weeks, if you're pushing 30 hours a week, I think that it gets pretty easy for in between. One, you don't have that many hours in between. You're probably training anywhere from 3 to 6 hours a day to get to that 30-hour mark for the week. And you have to rest in between to be able to hit the quality, the volume, make sure that you don't get injured, you're getting enough sleep. So you only have so many hours. It makes it easy to say, okay, I need to take a nap, put my feet up. There's a purpose to it because you got to hit that next session. However, when you go into an extended rest period, and by extended, I think after a couple days, you start to feel pretty good. You get into 3 or 4 and you start building back in. The mind starts racing a little bit. You start getting antsy. And for me, I still feel like I'm pretty good, but I'm not one to go out and add in extra workouts. I'm not going out there and saying, okay, well, a little extra run here won't hurt. Or I could just ride my bike, find a way to ride, maybe to the coffee shop, or maybe I can go for a little sneaky swim somewhere. That's not really me. That feels like cheating to me. So a hike with the family or a walk with the family, that's a little bit different. You can go do that. It's usually that's walking. I'm not going to count that, I guess, as part of my training regimen, even if there is maybe a TSS score out there that would grade a walk or a hike with the family. But I got 2 toddlers. Unless I'm carrying them up the mountain with me, a hike with them is really pretty short anyways. So, or a trip to the park or whatever. It might be draining in its own way, but still overall pretty restful. For me, I start doing a few extra projects around the house. Now, I'm not always the most cleanly person, as I smell or anything like that. Just organizational wise, I think I get a little tired. I clean up after myself for the most part. Maybe my wife, Courtney, might disagree with me on some aspects of that, but my tolerance for some of the disorder goes up as the training level increases, because it always comes back around to I'm going to perform. To perform, I got to rest, and I got to rest because I got to hit these workouts. Now, I start to become a bit of a different animal when I get more and more rested. And a light bulb went off, I think, on Courtney's head, and she starts going, is this how you're going to be when you stop doing triathlon? Because I started, taking out the vacuum and mopping the floors and reorganizing. And usually there's something that we can figure out to do. There's always a tiny little project of reorganizing or minimizing, whatever that is. That's sometimes things that we just go through and add in anyways. So, but this just got brought to a little bit bigger level. And then you add in a little bit more rest and a little more. And then I start looking at the walls funny, and I start going, is that a load bearing wall? And what other projects can I do? Now, it's a bit of an exaggeration. I do like my DIY projects. I like the process and the fact that you can do something, do an act, and have some sort of finish line and finished product. I try and keep it to a minimum because I like all my fingers and toes and body parts, and I try not to bite off too much more than I can chew, because once you start looking at that wall and you do the easy part of taking out the drywall, then you got to figure out how to put it all back together. And what I've also realized in my kind of obsessive personality of wanting to do everything correctly is that there really is no one correct way to do things. There is, but every professional has their own opinion on how to do it. And so there's a little bit of analysis paralysis that goes on in there as I'm trying to research a DIY, even if that's just replacing some pipes underneath the sink so that it flows a bit better. I try and stick away from the big ones because I know that's not going to be done in an afternoon. Got to multiply all these projects by 3. So some things that get put to the side are yard work. I love mowing my lawn. Not that I have the greenest lawn right now. It's struggling in the backyard, so I don't have to do it as much. But that's not even something that'll be put off because I'm on a riding lawnmower. So that almost counts as rest itself. But weed whacking and bush trimming are just something that you kind of put off when you're tired. It's super hot out and you don't always want to do it. So on these easy days, I kind of do it, put it in right after a workout. So you only have to shower once. You don't have to shower multiple times going out into the yard. And that's what I started doing the other day. And there is a point to some of this rambling. One is about rest. And I just think it's hilarious because I think as triathletes, it's always the hardest part. You see people get antsy in the off season. They do these adventure rides where gravel, bike packing, and all sorts of different stuff. And I guess right now I'm just pretty good at finding some projects around the house to fill my time. But back to my story is got done weed whacking, all good. Got to just trim a bush. It's by our AC unit, so we're kind of boxed in. There's a little fence, an AC unit, the bush, and our deck. And it just is not easy to get around to the far side of the bush. So I start with the easy parts first, that's blocking the pathway and everything. And it's all going fairly well. I don't have the best trimmer, but it gets the job done. And then I have to get and squeeze myself between the bush, which is not always so bad, but some of the branches are a little bit thick, so you don't want to get caught and scratched by them. And the AC's running. I don't really want to run into that because that's its own issue. And then there's the fence, and I'm trying to pay close attention to keep all my fingers because the trimmer obviously can take off these branches of the bush fairly easily without too much effort. And I'm thinking if I get a finger accidentally caught in here, I'm looking the other way, I'm going to end up losing a finger. And that's not good for swimming. Probably get away with it biking and running, but in general, I like to keep all 10 digits. So as I'm going, though, I'm almost done. I get to the point where I'm stuck between this fence AC unit and the bush, and out of nowhere, I feel something sting me in the arm, then my finger, and then my leg. So I drop the trimmer, somehow managed to get myself out of the bush without running through the bush, out into the middle of the yard, screaming super loud. And Courtney comes out thinking I just chopped my finger off or arm or got run over by the tractor or whatever. Finds out I got stung, and her heart rate comes down, and she goes back inside. And I start to look around and figure out, what did I just do? Did I cut into the nest? Did I, kick one? Where is it? And after a little bit of looking around, obviously it was wasps, because getting stung multiple times, bees usually aren't that aggressive, and this hurt so much more than I remember ever getting stung before. I don't know if I've gotten stung by a wasp, but this one, it got me like in the bone on my hand. And I go and I see it, and long story short, they look like they're coming out of the AC unit. So now my heart rate's up. I'm pretty sure that I'm out for blood now because they've stung me. I thought before it was just random happenstance, but one of them got Briella twice when we were jumping on the trampoline, like across the other side of the yard. So before this, I thought, okay, it just kind of landed on her. She swatted it. Just, a misunderstanding of between human and insect. Whatever, it's sad. But once I got stung, I was like, oh man, that definitely really hurt. And you got two of us now. This isn't going to happen. You're not building a nest in the AC unit. So I did a quick Google search. Apparently soap and water, pretty darn good at getting rid of wasps. They don't swim well. They don't fly well with soap on their wings. So I got that Dawn Power Wash, spraying if they're flying, and I hooked up my shop vac with a bunch of soapy water in it to suck them in, and then they can't get out because they get stuck in the water. So was able to get out 6 to 10 of them, feeling good about myself there. Stung 3 times, got my payback. Don't really think they're in there. I don't think there was a big nest because 6 to 8, that's a pretty small amount, I would say. And we found a few old nests around here, but haven't had a big concentration just yet. So I go back inside, rest for a little bit. But with the kids, we go out to the trampoline and we're jumping around. And then for whatever reason, I go over there by our shed. There's like a pot with like wood, dirt, but it's made out of like a wine barrel type looking thing, like slats of wood. It looks like it got cut in half. And I just see some wasps coming out the bottom, and I'm feeling a little cocky. And so I take the kids inside and I decide to go to war with them because I'm like, this seems to be a bigger problem. And I just try dumping some water under there. They get angry. Some fly out, get a couple. But then I decide in my foolishness to push the pot with my foot. And at that point, it disturbs the entire nest, which I now think is underneath the bottom of the pot. And I don't know, 50 to 100 wasps start flying out. One gets on me without me even seeing, and I'm probably 20 to 30 feet back, stings me in the neck. And so I go back inside after that and kind of with my tail between my legs going, all right, I think I'm a bit outmatched here, especially during the day. And as I research more, you should really only attempt this before dawn or after dusk because they're all in the hive then and they're a lot less active. So I try to let it die down and decide I'm going to let the professionals handle this. So we have somebody coming out and I'm going to let them take it on. I think I can handle a few at a time, but when it comes to the big ones, especially after getting stung 4 times, I was like, I won one battle, you won another. The war is long. I will eventually win the war, but right now there's a ceasefire. So we'll pick this up. I think it's going to be all good, but that was kind of my escalation of having a lot more rest, having one project turn into another, turn into some other thing, which is, I feel like, pretty common. It's something in whatever, owning a house or just living in a place where you try and just do one simple thing and it turns into this few hour long fiasco, which is one reason why I don't just go knocking down walls and I try and research first because I know I'd get halfway into that project, way in over my head and be freaking out. So that's kind of the end of it. I'm back into some training, back into resting between the workouts and making sure that's prioritized. And the wasp saga I just thought was kind of funny. And I'm not sure how many professional triathletes or how many of my colleagues are out running around their yard looking like a crazy person swatting at the air. But I was able to come out relatively unscathed, but learned a pretty valuable lesson, I think, somewhere in there about maybe biting off a bit more than you can chew, which probably could be applied quite a bit in triathlon and life in general. So just glad I'm not allergic. My daughter isn't allergic, and we all made it out okay. So I would say kind of pivoting, now that I'm back into some big training, I also noticed as I'm out on these rides, and as a dad, you tend to notice there's a lot more animals out and about. And I've gone through teaching my kid animal noises. And, you know, you have the books where you're reading the cow goes moo, chicken goes cluck, horse goes neigh. But one, I'm not a fan of that because if I ever heard a chicken say cluck, I'm going to hand it my wallet and then run the other way because there's something wrong with that chicken. First off, chickens are already a little bit nerve-wracking because I feel like they're little tiny feathered dinosaurs that are running around. But I kind of digress. I feel like as I get longer into these rides and it gets hot, you get a little dehydrated, a little low on sugar toward the end of the rides, no matter how much you try and refuel yourself. And I think also this is solo sessions. I'm doing some solo long rides. I feel like there's just a titch of that solitary confinement. Now we're outside, you get the sun, you're doing what you love, so obviously it's nowhere near as bad as solitary confinement. However, talking to yourself in your head for a while like this, you start to lose it a little bit and you start to not care as much. And I just have a thing, I don't know, I think I learned it from my dad or something, but whenever we see some animals around, especially like cats going around, you got to call the animal. Like a little cat, you go, psst, 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 here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Or if you see a dog out, you're calling to the dog, like, come on over here. Come here, boy. And Courtney hates it because in our old neighborhood, we had coyotes and I'd call to the coyotes, just kind of, you know, get them to run along with me, or they never would because it's a coyote and it doesn't want to be around humans. But she's always like, well, what if it comes over? And I'd be like, I don't know. I mean, I'd maybe pet it and run away. Not really sure. Now, I don't condone petting wild animals. I don't think that's a good idea at all. In fact, I think it's a very bad idea. But there's just something in me that calls out to them. And I get riding around here, you see a lot of cows. And by the way, a cow sound is more like a than a moo. And I think the most fun one to actually call out to is the turkeys. And there are just wild packs of turkeys around here. I have no idea what an elk sound makes or an alpaca because there's quite a lot of those. Those stump me. I haven't figured out those noises, and I think they're a bit beyond my scope. but a turkey's always a good one. And I think they call back sometimes. So there's a little bit of positive reinforcement there, but you just give them a little, blah, 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 and sometimes they call back. But I've always kind of wanted either the cows, the turkeys, whatever, just kind of run alongside me. Not in front of me or anything, but just a little training partner there for like 10 to 20 to 30 seconds as they run along the fence, or get the horse kind of fired up, find a little sea biscuit to kind of ride alongside you for a little buddy. So I don't know, maybe I need some more friends to go out and ride with and train with every so often if I'm starting to resort to some animal friends. But I feel like we already have some in the sport of triathlon, some people who have embraced this. I mean, you got Joe Skipper, who's the junkyard dog, and he'd be great to have on a ride, especially when you get out into the country and you get some country dogs who are coming at you. And instead of just yelling no, you got Joe to communicate with them and just, give them a little junkyard dog bark to scare them off and speak to them in their language. Let loose some dog Britain swears just at the dog to kind of put them in their place, let them know that we mean business. And again, I think you've had Sam Long banging his chest at the beginning of some of these start lines that we've caught on camera, and that's a little bit gorilla-like. So I like the energy. I like it a lot. I don't know that there's really that much of that in triathlon, and I've always liked kind of watching football highlight clips, some of the hype that goes with some of these other sports that you just don't have as much of in triathlon, which I can get into kind of why I think that. But one of the best ones I think is Brian Dawkins, a safety. He played a while back, but if you don't know who he is, you should just go Google his name, put it into YouTube, and see some of these highlight videos for him, in particular some of the documentary stuff, because this guy just super passionate. I believe his nickname was Project X, so you already know the guy's a madman, and he destroyed people on the football field. And when he would come out of the tunnel, one of the times he just got so fired up, so caught up, and he runs out on all fours like an animal, just barking, going back and forth, all fired up to play. I think the crowd loved it. His teammates loved it, kind of did it real quick, and then went up and went out to the field where everybody was at, just kind of like, let's go. And I think that would be absolutely amazing if we had somebody in the Ironman Pro Series or T100 in our call out do something similar to that, just outside their mind, going out to the start line, super fired up, come out on all fours. Can you imagine that? They're standing there, call the name, they're always hiding behind the backings of the branding before they get called out. And I don't think they really show below the waist for most of the time. So can you imagine they get their name called out, nobody shows up. Then the camera pans down and you just see one of the guys or girls or whatever on all fours, just kind of barking, going back and forth, just seemingly almost like eyes glazed over, just in another world, ready to race. That would be, I think, incredible. Kind of funny, but just the energy that would bring. I don't know who would do it or who would be up for it, but that would be just an amazing moment in the sport of triathlon call-ups, because all we have right now are people kind of giving a wave, a little heart, or a little bit of clapping, and I'm victim to that too, just a little head nod, maybe a point to the camera. There's not as much energy. I think if we can bring some energy to those start corrals and get people fired up, that would be amazing. The only issue is, and this kind of goes into a racing mindset talk, I think, is that you have to kind of leash that beast. You can't let the beast out at the very beginning of a triathlon. Maybe if you're doing a super sprint, we'll kind of put that to the side. Super sprint's short enough where you can race on emotion for, I would say, the entire race and not give too much thought to it, because everything is so short. You can just go all out. But even a sprint, and as you go up to Olympic and above, you have to be able to keep that emotion at bay. So for the very start, you might let the leash go a little bit because you want to get out and get clear of some people and not be fighting in the mass. So it's smart to use a little bit of energy right at the beginning of the race to get away from everybody else, save it from fighting. Heck, you might need to release that beast a little bit if you're side by side with somebody and they keep hitting you in the head. Well, I won't ever start something, but I'll make sure to finish it. Like, don't mess with me. This is my space. So might be able to let that out a little there. But over a 7.5 hour race, even more for an Ironman sometimes, you can't race on emotion. And I think I've gotten the most emotional while racing at an Ironman or full distance event at the half marathon point. And you still have over an hour of running by right there. So if you let it all out, you don't want to be a mile down the road crying or all emotional and not in the moment focused. So I think that that part, I really relate to some of that hype video, and I've got tons of them saved on Instagram of football players or just the 4x100 free relay from the Olympics when it was USA versus France. Just some of these moments where you just see the raw emotion going out. But in football, there's 15-minute quarters, 4 of them, and I think there's a stat where they only play for a handful of minutes every game because each play is just a few seconds long. So you can be explosive, emotional, and just let it all out every single play versus in a triathlon, it's about efficiency, and it's about using that and letting it out, kind of putting a top on it and slowly letting it leak out over a certain amount of time and kind of letting it build, let that momentum go. So I kind of feel like I'm straddled between two positions where there's this childlike, fun, calm, because calm is fast and just very, I guess, just thinking a lot about it, like very cerebral part of racing in triathlon where you don't want to get too hyped up. You just want a very blank, empty mind almost to get to that flow state. And then there's this other side where I think you see a lot in the sprint finishes or as you get towards the end of the race or maybe in key moments of the race where you kind of open up that can a little bit, let out that beast that's inside, just that emotional side that you can really feel and use. And I think that's what kind of helps you tap into that next level as well. But you really have to have a finger on both of those and you tread that line back and forth, because if you open that can too early, you start the sprint too early or you let out too much emotion and you burn too many matches that you have in your match box. And I guess I'm just going to try and use as many cliches as possible when I'm talking at this point, but you might blow up and cost the race. So that's that fun dynamic back and forth. And I think we're starting to see that there are some guys who race on some emotion. Lionel has talked about how he just races angry. I think Sam, who he's also raced and seems to race and be fired up more than some other guys, where I think you see Hayden Wild just sitting almost meditating beforehand. Yuri does that. So you have a lot of these contrasts and it's really figuring out for yourself. And all those guys are successful and have won big races recently. So I don't think there's a necessarily wrong way to do it unless it's not sustainable for yourself at the same time if you're just not winning or performing well. So are getting the most out of yourself, I should say, because like I talked about at last episode, it's not just about winning. It's about getting the most out of yourself overall. But that's just interesting aspect to it. And I think I just go back and forth because it's really tough. Like there have been times in my career where I've really had that high emotion level, in particular during the super sprint races and during Super League in certain races there, and you can almost see it. Like you could see it on my face, the pain and everything. And then you go into some of these longer races, and Ironman Arizona and Challenge Roth are kind of two of them that I had really successful full distance races at. And I just remember I just kind of thought my way through the day. I had songs stuck in my head. I had a lot of, checking the dashboard and staying present in the moment and being able to work my way through the different situations, because on both of those races, I was fairly isolated on the bike. And again, just when you're mainly all alone or with one other person, there's a lot of time to question things, look at numbers, and kind of get out of the moment, think too far ahead or think too much about what's happened, when really it's just whatever can I do right in this moment. And I think no matter if you're being emotional or if you're super calm, as long as you're in that moment and able to make those decisions, that's the prime racing mindset. And that's the flow state too, is just being present in the moment and having things flow. And then sometimes it goes by super fast and you hardly even know that there was a race. So that's just something, I was kind of thinking about over here. I'm not really sure how I went from ranting about water bottles. We got animal callings, and that was I always laugh at one of the questions I get is like, what's your hidden talent? I'm like, I don't know if I have any hidden talents. And I always defaulted to juggling, and I might have to change it to just certain animal noises, certain animal sounds. But I'm going to stand by, like, when I'm teaching my kids the sounds that animals make, we're going like chickens are buck, 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 versus cluck. So we're just not going to do what the book says. We're going to try and be as realistic as possible and as specific as possible. I'll be interested to know if in their preschool, kindergarten, as they get older, if they're asked what sound does animal make and they make the realistic sound, I would love to be there to see the teacher's reaction of that, because probably most kids just say what the book says, which I'm wondering who kind of determined that when they're listening to pig and they're just like, that's an oink right there. And this is how we're going to spell it. I think that's a little bit weird, because I don't think a pig really sounds like oink. It's more of a snort, if anything. But maybe that's not cute enough for a kid's book. So I would kind of love to be there during that process for when we all just decided to agree upon what the animal sounds were. And then also for when I teach my kids and then they go and tell other people, because I would just love to be there. That was kind of just a kind of tangent a little bit. That kind of came out of nowhere. But anyways, I think, again, that's this episode, I feel like, has a little bit of everything. I feel like I got it all out of my system. I think I spent the longest on the wasp story. So that's the biggest thing that's happening in my life. Versus as we ramp up, I think as my training hours start to get to those upper 20 hours, we're going to hear a little bit more about the adventures, some of the mindset stuff that's going on there. But like I said, I went through this period of rest, and there's all these other distractions that are happening that I'm trying to sort through. And that just led to a battle with the wasps, and kind of thinking about how I tend to call to the animals as I'm training at times when I'm by myself. And I'll stand by. I still think we have some other people. If I think there's certain people out there who might do the same things, even if they aren't calling to the animals. Everybody lets out a little you every once in a while as they're going downhill. You got to let it out. I think it's something deep inside of us, a little primal, that you just have to let out. And I just feel like that relates so well to how I race, and kind of wearing my emotions on my sleeve, but kind of trying to keep that in check overall. And I don't know, maybe it's a little weird. So that's good. I mean, we're all weird, aren't we? We do triathlon for a sport, or at least I do. I don't know if everybody who listens here does triathlon, but we pick a funny way to go out and have fun, as they call it, the type 2 fun of just pain and suffering. And when you look back, you have a good story to tell. So I'll kind of stop my mindless rambling on and off before I get on a completely different tangent that I have no real knowing where it goes. I'll try and save myself, trying to at least have a little bit of structure as I figure out exactly what's going on with this episode. But I feel like I had a little bit of good feedback on the first one. I'll be real interested to see how this is received, with a sprinkling in of some random stories, some racing mindset type of things, and just overall just having fun with it. So thanks everybody for tuning in to this second episode. There's more to come. As you can see, I have a lot of random and maybe rambling things on my mind that I'm willing to share and open up about. So if you got comments, good or bad, leave them. Let me know. Let me know if I'm not going into detail enough, or if you want to send some questions that I can go through and answer as well. That's sure fine by me. So thanks again. Thanks for listening. Won't take up any more of your time. Until the next episode, Thanks for listening to Solo Sessions.